Meg in the other boat was delightfully situated, face to face with the rowers, who both admired the prospect and feathered their oars with uncommon skill and dexterity. Mr. Brooke was a grave, silent young man with handsome brown eyes and a pleasant voice. Meg liked his quiet manners and considered him a walking encyclopedia of useful knowledge. He never talked to her much, but he looked at her a good deal, and she felt sure that he did not regard her with aversion. Ned, being in college, of course, put on all the airs which freshmen think it their bounden duty to assume. He was not very wise, but very good-natured, and altogether an excellent person to carry on a picnic. Sally Gardner was absorbed in keeping her white pink dress clean, and chattering with the ubiquitous Fred, who kept Beth in constant terror by his pranks. It was not far to Long Meadow, but the tent was pitched and the wickets down by the time they arrived. A pleasant green field with 3 wide spreading oaks in the middle and a smooth strip of turf for croquet. "Welcome to Camp Lawrence," said the young host as they landed, with exclamation of delight. "Brooke is commander-in-chief. I am commissary general. The other fellows are staff officers, and you ladies are company. The tent is for your especial benefit, and that oak is your drawing room. This is the mess hall, and the third is the camp kitchen. Now let's have a game before it gets hot, and then we'll see about dinner." Frank, Beth, Amy, and Grace sat down to watch the game played by the other 8. Mr. Brooke chose Meg, Kate, and Fred. Laurie took Sally, Joe, and Ned. The English played well, but the Americans played better and contested every inch of the ground as strongly as if the spirit of '76 inspired them. Joe and Fred had several skirmishes, and once narrowly escaped high wards. Joe was through the last wicket and had missed a stroke, which failure ruffled her a good deal. Fred was close behind her, and his turn came before hers. He gave a stroke, his ball hit the wicket, and stopped an inch on the wrong side. No one was very near, and running up to examine, he gave it a sly nudge with his toe, which put it just an inch on the right. "I'm through. Now, Miss Joe, I'll settle you and get in first," cried the young gentleman, swinging his mallet for another blow. "You pushed it. I saw you. It's my turn now," said Joe sharply. "Upon my word, I didn't move it. It rolled a bit, perhaps, but that is allowed, so stand off, please, and let me have a go at the stake." "We don't cheat in America, but you can if you choose," said Joe angrily. "Yankees are a deal the most tricky, everybody knows. There you go," returned Fred, croqueting her ball far away. Joe opened her lips to say something rude, but checked herself in time, coloring up to her forehead, and stood a minute hammering down a wicket with all her might, while Fred hit the stake and declared himself out with much exultation. She went out to get her ball and was a long time finding it among the bushes, but she came back looking cool and quiet and waited her turn patiently. It took several strokes to regain the place she had lost, and when she got there, the other side had nearly won, for the ball was the last one and lay near the shack. "By George, it's all up with us. Goodbye, Kate. Miss Joe owes me one, so you are finished," cried Fred excitedly as they all drew near to see the finish. "Yankees have a trick of being generous to their enemies," said Joe with a look that made the lad red. "Especially when they beat them," she added as, leaving Kate's ball untouched, she won the game by a clever stroke. Laurie threw up his hat, then remembered that it wouldn't do to exult over the defeat of his guests, and stopped in the middle of a cheer to whisper to his friend, "Good for you, Joe. He did cheat. I saw him, but we can't tell him so, but he won't do it again. Take my word for it." Meg drew her aside under pretense of pinning up a loose braid and said approvingly, "It was dreadfully provoking, but you kept your temper, and I'm so glad, Joe. Don't praise me, Meg, for I could box his ears this minute. I should certainly have bowled over if I hadn't stayed among the nettles that got my rage under enough to hold my tongue. It's simmering now, so I hope you'll keep out of my way, returned Jo, biting her lips as she glowered at Fred from under her big fat. Time for lunch, said Mr. Brooke, looking at his watch. Commissary General, will you make the fire and get water while Miss March, Miss Sally, and I spread the table? Who can make good coffee? Jo can, said Meg, glad to recommend her sister. So Jo, feeling that her late lessons in cookery were to do her honor, went to preside over the coffee pot, while the children collected dry sticks and the boys made a fire and got water from a spring nearby. Miss Kate sketched, and Frank talked to Beth, who was making little mats of braided rushes to serve as plates. The commander-in-chief and his aides soon spread the tablecloth with an inviting array of eatables and drinkables, prettily decorated with green leaves. Jo announced that the coffee was ready, and everyone settled themselves to a hearty meal. For youth is seldom dyspeptic, and exercise develops wholesome appetites. A very merry lunch it was, for everything seemed fresh and funny, and frequent peals of laughter startled a venerable horse who fed nearby. There was a pleasing inequality in the table, which produced many mishaps to cups and plates. Acorns dropped into the milk, little black ants partook of the refreshments without being invited, and fuzzy caterpillars swung down from the tree to see what was going on. 3 white-headed children peeped over the fence, and an unobjectionable dog barked at them from the other side of the river with all his might and main. There's salt if you prefer it, said Laurie, as he handed Jo a saucer of berries. Thank you, I prefer spiders, she replied, fishing up 2 unwary little ones who had gone to a creamy death. How dare you remind me of that horrid dinner party when yours is so nice in every way, added Jo, as they both laughed and ate out of one plate, the china having run short. I had an uncommonly good time that day, and haven't gotten over it yet. This is no credit to me, you know. I don't do anything. It's you and Meg and Brooke who make it go, and I'm no end obliged to you. What shall we do when we can't eat any more? Asked Laurie, feeling that his trump card had been played when the lunch was over. Have games till it's cooler. I brought authors, and I dare say Miss Kate knows something new and nice. Go and ask her. She's company, and you ought to stay with her more. Aren't you company, too? I thought she'd suit Brooke, but he keeps talking to Meg, and Kate just stares at them through that ridiculous glass of hers. I'm going, so you needn't try to preach propriety, for you can't do it, Jo. Miss Kate did know several new games, and as the girls would not and the boys could not eat any more, they all adjourned to the drawing-room to play rigmarole. One person begins a story, any nonsense you like, and tells as long as he pleases, only taking care to stop short at some exciting point, when the next takes it up and does the same. It's very funny when well done, and makes a perfect jumble of tragical comic stuff to laugh over. Please start it, Mr. Brooke, said Kate, with a commanding air which surprised Meg, who treated the tutor with as much respect as any other gentleman. Lying on the grass at the feet of the 2 young ladies, Mr. Brooke obediently began the story, with the handsome brown eyes steadily fixed upon the sunshiny river. Once upon a time, a knight went out into the world to seek his fortune, for he had nothing but his sword and his shield. He travelled a long while, nearly 28 years, and had a hard time of it, till he came to the palace of a good old king, who had offered a reward to anyone who would tame and train a fine but unbroken colt, of which he was very fond. The knight agreed to try, and got on slowly but surely, for the colt was a gallant fellow, and soon learned to love his new master, though he was freakish and wild. Every day, when he gave his lessons to the pet of the king's, the knight rode him through the city, and as he rode he looked everywhere for a certain beautiful face, which he had seen many times in his dreams, but never found. One day, as he went prancing down a quiet street, he saw at the window of a ruinous castle the lovely face. He was delighted, inquired who lived in this old castle, and was told that several captive princesses were kept there by a spell,
and spun all day to lay up money to buy their liberty. The knight wished intensely that he could free them, but he was poor and could only go by each day, watching for the sweet face and longing to see it out in the sunshine. At last he resolved to get into the castle and ask how he could help them. He went and knocked. The great door flew open, and he beheld a ravishingly lovely lady, who exclaimed with a cry of rapture, "At last! At last!"
continued Kate, who had read French novels and admired Estelle.
"'Tis she!" cried Count Gustave, and fell at her feet in an ecstasy of joy. "O rise," she said, extending a hand of marble fairness. "Never till you tell me how I may rescue you," swore the knight, still kneeling. "Alas! my cruel fate condemns me to remain here till my tyrant is destroyed. Where is the villain? In the mauve salon. Go, brave heart, and save me from despair. I obey, and return victorious or dead." With these thrilling words he rushed away, and flinging open the door of the mauve salon was about to enter, when he received